Hi everyone, it's the 2020 Biz Kickstart event and we're here with Pat who's going to talk to us all about getting out of our own way. That is the topic of today. So Pat, say hey, share a bit about you and tell us a bit about how you got started.
Hi guys, I'm Pat. I'm really labeled a no crap coach. I get people out of their own way and self-doubt. I got started with this because I found out that a lot of people, including me, have a lot of self-doubt along the way. And no matter how wealthy you are, how poor you are, has nothing to do with monetary value. We all have that little evil twin in our head that says we can't do anything. So I try to push people into their purpose and their God-given right, because we all have gifts that we share. And I want them to really get out there and share their gifts, including you and me, because we have something special that nobody else has and we're unique. So that's my mission in this world, is to get you to where you want to be and in the glory of God, and to praise him for what he gave you as a gift.
So when we think about getting out of our own way, that implies that we get in our own way in lots and lots of different and creative ways. Would you be able to share a bit about what those are? Are there any common themes or anything specific that you want to mention?
Yes, we get in our own way in our own heads. We get in our own heads with the stories that we tell ourselves. We can make novels in our head of things that aren't even true. Because if you go look back and you analyze what you're saying to yourself or what you're thinking about, 99% isn't true. And we just throw it out there and we don't even care. And it goes in our heads and then we end up believing it. And that stops a lot of people from living in their purpose, because maybe they were told when they were younger that you're no good, you can't do this, you can't do that. Or somebody that's jealous of you or a friend of yours says, what are you doing? You're not a professional. How you can give that information out? Anybody that talks negative to you, we remember that. We don't remember the stuff that people say positive to us. We always remember the negative comments. You could have 30 people saying how great you are. One person will say, you suck, and then it's all you remember, and then you go down for about a month because you believe in that.
Yeah.
So that's what I feel like we got to get out of that self-doubt business.
Do you know the reason why that is? Do you understand, the concept of why we hold on to the negative more than the positive?
I think it's human nature. I think we like to see suffering in a way, because the whole world revolves around suffering. And when you write a post about suffering, you get the most engagement ever. And if you're happy, happy, happy all the time, you won't hear from anybody. People dwell in suffering. So we got to get out of that key of suffering. We don't have to suffer here. We weren't made, we have everything we need right here. There's no reason why we lack anything. And that's what people feel. People feel like they lack things. And a lot of people feel like it's monetary stuff. Things, money, things, and that's what they worth. That's what they're worth. And that's disgusting to me. We're not worth monetary stuff. What we're worth, we can't even buy. We're priceless as far as I'm concerned. So I think a lot of people love that negativity because it keeps them from growing and being in their purpose.
It's almost like kind of like holding on to the past almost. Is that what people tend to do?
Yeah, I think at a certain age when we're growing up, if we had a bad past, a bad childhood, where, we got to end up saying we're not perfect. If you want to be perfect, then you better put yourself in a corner somewhere, because you're never going to get there. So I feel like we're brought up, even if somebody says you're no good, or even your parents, sometimes your parents can say, oh, go do this, or how come you can't be like that one? They always compare you to somebody else. And that comparison destroys you at a young age. Very young age, they start with that. And instead of them giving you gifts and sharing what you got, and even if you're different than somebody else, exhume that out of somebody. Don't make it down like they're no good or something is wrong with them because they're not like the other person that you want them to be. So yeah, I think all that stems from growing up and the way we're conditioned along the way.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it? I think is it when we're younger than 7, I think it's 7 or 8 when the majority of your stories are sort of created or held onto and all those things. But what I do find curious though is very often that can be sort of almost confirmed like at a later age. So although we say don't we, this is one of my it irritates me ever so slightly regarding sort of therapy, and everything seems to go back to childhood. And I get that, but then what sort of impacts you like after 30 years or 40 years or whatever could literally be a confirmation of that from somebody a bit more recent, you know? And that's my gripe with it really is, you know, not everything goes back to when you were 5 years old. You're 50 now. Like there's an element of like detachment involved with your emotions and all those things, but you know, it could be your co-worker said something that your parents used to say, you know, or that sort of thing. So that's a little bit of a cop out, the therapists, to say that everything goes back to your childhood. That just makes your life easier. Like it doesn't
Yeah,
really.
just right. They label you as one part, and that exhumes everything.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is, how's that serving you? How's that serving you when you were 3 years old? Your mother smacked you down and said, "Stop doing this." You know, how's that serving you at 50 years old? What's going on there? So, first of all, the biggest thing that you have to do, and if you don't do it, I could see you getting into that trap, is what is going on with you and why aren't you forgiving that? You know, forgiveness is key to moving on. Forgive it. You know, we're not perfect. Forgive it. And usually it doesn't happen until after you have your kids and you start seeing what you're doing to your kids. Then you see, oh, wow, mom and dad, I understand, you know? And it's like, was it really true? No, it's not true. It's how they were brought up. You know, they were brought up with their crap. So your crap is just going from one generation to another generation. So when is it going to stop?
Yeah, it's almost like we're parenting our kids like our great grandparents did, because that's all they knew and that's all their children knew and that's all their children knew, and it's like, okay, so we can
I
be.
know. That's like telling somebody, okay, you're an alcoholic. Your grandfather was an alcoholic, so you're going to be one. So you better not drink. You know, how ridiculous is that? They keep on going from generation to generation to generation. Knock it off already. You know, you're your own person and you got to think for yourself. Sometimes you got to grow up. You know, you got to grow up, grab the world by its whatever and just go with it. And you know what? At the end of the day, I don't worry about what anybody says. I don't worry about what you say, what they say, whatever man says. I worry about what God says. I got to answer to him. I don't have to answer to anybody that's on this earth. I know what I have to do, and I hope that I'm doing things that I know that is right. And if I don't, I hope somebody tells me that so I can, you know, change a little bit and maybe forgive them or they forgive me or whatever and move on, because we can't have a world like this that constantly, you know, is gravitating towards hate and not want to change. There is change. You can change. And I'm proof that you can change. You know, I had been on a diet. I lost like over 200 pounds. I changed. You know, I'm the one that put the food in my mouth. Nobody gave it to me. Nobody shoved it down my throat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we had the power to change. And how do you do that? You do that I did that by a lot of prayer, a lot of people that surrounded me and helped me. We need people to help us. We can never do anything alone. And you need the positive people that are helping you and not the jealous ones that are throwing it out there. You know what I mean? Because you got a lot of people and a lot of people want to be on your back because they feel like, oh, you know, you got a lot of followers, you got a lot of this, you got a lot of that. Everything consumes around social media, which is disgusting. You know, our whole life is like, oh, I didn't get a like. Oh, this one dropped me. I'm not their friend anymore. What happened? Who cares? There's millions of people in this world. You're worrying about one or two people. So
Yeah,
you got to
it's
change
weird,
your
really, isn't
mind.
it? Because how can I put it? Uh, it's weird because it's kind of it's all exaggerated. So we're sort of playing at the edges a little bit. You see someone that's there floating on a lotus leaf, all nice and quiet, and then there's someone that's like screaming and shouting and doing all kinds of stuff. And then you look at that and go, well, I don't enjoy doing something that gets me a lot of attention. You're then having to fight with the whole, well, what's more important, social acceptance or accepting yourself? And the problem is a difficult balance, a very difficult decision to make, because social pressure and all those things was part of us when we were tribal as well. So it's a very difficult push-pull around, well, does it really matter as long as I feel okay, as long as I know what my place is in this sort of community that I've built? It's interesting you mentioned the followers side as well. You know, it's almost like people are happy as long as you don't push their own boundaries. You know, like parents are, oh yeah, we love you just the way you are and you can do what you want. But then as soon as you start to get too successful, as in they start to wonder like what their beliefs are. Like if you sort of contradict them, like if you contradict other people's beliefs about what's possible, as like you mentioned, people can get jealous, people can get on your back and all those things. And from my own experience as well, it's more about them than it is about you. It's got
Right.
nothing really to do with the way you do things. But the problem is I mean, I have this problem. I'm a bit more selfless than selfish, as in I'm perfectly happy to help someone, do things for someone, think about somebody else, and and I do it, and I go, oh, that was a bad idea. So it happens to a lot of people.
Yes, it does. It does. And I could see parents when they have their children, oh, look at she walked in 2 months. You're starting them at a young age, comparing them to somebody else immediately because you want to be proud of your kids. But
Hmm.
you don't realize the destruction that you're doing to them by doing that, Because at the end of the day, I don't care if you read by 2 months old or you read by 5 years old. At the end of the day, we all read the same together anyway at the end of the day, right? So
Yeah.
we're all going to get up there anyway, so knock it off already, And it's hard. It really is hard to see that happen. And now I see it even more with people because I'm aware of it. Awareness is the key. So you see it more and you want to like say, okay, you go to the supermarket, you see these parents with their kids, and it's like, all right. And it's not about you. It's not about you telling your kid what you want them to do. We want them to be in a secure job. We want them to make sure they get a pension. We want to make sure nothing is written in stone. If they want to be an artist, let them be an artist. Let them create themselves. And that's why I think school is a ruination of everything because we don't give them, you're not using your gifts, what you should be doing. We're in a whole cycle of what we have to do, what society wants us to do, to get to the next level. But meanwhile, all these people are living and working miserably because they're not happy on what they're doing. So just think if everybody did what they love to do, how wonderful that would be, and it's a shame that we stopped that at a young age.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned comparison as well because it's the old sort of old quote compassion no comparison is the thief of happiness, right? And
Right.
I think a lot of it is to do with that. A lot of that can come from the fact that we see other people comparing, so we think that it's normal to a certain extent. Like I mean, I get everything's relative, right? Everything's relative to something else. So it's hard to know where things sit unless there's an element of comparison to a certain degree. But I guess it is about the edges as well, isn't it? But like, how intense do you compare? Like, does it really matter if something is better than something else? How important is it? That like
Right.
because we can say that I'm smaller than some people, I'm taller than some people. Fine, great, but does it really matter? And the answer is no. Where when I was younger, it used to matter. I was
Exactly. Exactly. Does it matter if you live in a mansion or a tent? The people that live in the mansion could be miserable, and you live in a tent, you could be happy as hell. So, does that matter what you're doing? It doesn't matter.
I like to talk about that a little bit more because I think the important side of it is important. Be a weird way of putting it, but I think that making sure that what's important to us is also helpful. We often talk about like what things mean and whether it matters or not, and how do we tend to navigate this, and how can we use that to hold ourselves back, but also what can we do to stop that from stopping us?
I think you have to be with the people that you're comfortable with, that want to move in the direction that you want to move to. Because this may sound stupid to you, but as I was losing my weight, I would have some people tell me how horrible I looked skinny. And I said, you got to be kidding me. And you really got to put it into, rational. You really got to ration that out. And you got to say, okay, you like me 400 pounds, but now that I'm under this here, you don't like me now. So I don't look good. Like, what is going on in their heads? Like, I saw a lot of that stuff going on as I was going through my transformation. And I really found out a lot about people, and I was saying, "Oh my goodness, look at this!" Instead of encouraging, And instead of going forward and say, if you need help with anything, let me help you. All I saw was, all right, that's enough. You know, you're an addict. Now you're like, you're a gym rat. You don't stop going to the gym. Like everything was negative. Everything was negative. And when I look back, I'm saying, wow, I can't believe that. And maybe I was like that too with other people, you know? Maybe I was in a position where I was jealous of them and I would say something like that. Or maybe it's not out of jealousy. Maybe it's out of concern because they don't know what's going on. But the way you get out of that is not pay attention to what other people say. Unless they're saying something that you're doing wrong or you're hurting yourself. Like if you're on drugs, alcohol, and you're hurting yourself, that's a different story. But if you want to accept this fact that you want to move on and you want to move above stuff, hang out with those type of people and you'll see the other people will lay off and you'll get the other people to encourage you. And those are the people you hang out with, the encouragers. And just make sure they're encouraging you in the right direction, because they can encourage you also in the wrong direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they can make your head so hard that you don't know where you're at. But yeah, try to hang out with the people that are good and know that it's your morals. You know, your morals or what you believe in is right there on target. And you go it all the way, you know, and I prayer works great. I mean, God, to me, brings angels around you and helps you out. I mean, when you think of something that you want to do or something that you need, all you have to do is think about it. And people just come, all of a sudden you'll meet this one that knows that and that one that knows that, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen by coincidence.
No.
That happens because now you're in your realm and you know that this is the right path that you're taking, because now there's people all here to help you out. And that's how I think it is. I don't pay attention to what other people say to you, especially the negative ones. Go find the people that are going to be good for you and then move on with that.
Yeah, for sure. I completely echo that. And I don't know if you experience this as well, but I often catch myself and stop myself from saying I guess the comparison-based thing, or the jealousy-based thing, or the envy. I don't like using the word jealousy. I prefer like envy, right? Like they're doing something that you want to do. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, okay, don't say the bad thing, say the supportive thing. You know, say the thing that encourages them. But it's a choice that you make, because it's all so easy to do the negative thing. It's very easy to say, "Oh, you best be careful," or "Don't go too fast," or it's very easy to say those things. And sometimes I've had to catch myself.
Right.
And go, "Nope, say the positive thing. Don't say
Exactly.
the
And
negative."
wisdom comes a long way, because I want to see somebody who's been through it. And don't talk to me if you haven't never been through it. You know what I mean? I want to know what you've been. I'll listen to somebody who's been through the process I've been through. And if they tell me, Pat, you're going too fast, or Pat, cut down a little bit because this is not right, what you're doing, whatever it is, I would take more guidance from them than somebody who didn't even do it. You know, because I see where they went to and I see where they have gone. And I would really recommend doing that too. Listen to people who have been through the process that you're going through. If you didn't coach somebody all your life and now all of a sudden you're doing it and they tell you something is wrong, I would listen to that person because they knew better. You know, they know better what's going on with that. If somebody built a car and you're building a car, you know, and they know better than you because you never built a car before, I would listen to them, you know. So we got to listen to people who are genius in their own right, you know, because everybody has their own genius in their own right. So I would listen to those people instead of the people that are tearing you down in the middle of that, because they're afraid of you growing, because they don't see themselves growing. So because they don't see themselves growing, you shouldn't be growing. You know, you shouldn't be changing. You should stay the same way you are. And it's a shame, because sometimes I think it's out of fear that they feel that way, because they feel like they're going to lose you as a friend, or you might be meeting other people, or you might be so important to them that, you know, you're not going to like them anymore. It's all about themselves. It has nothing to do with you. And you really got to weigh that out, you know, the options that you have with those people.
It's an interesting point that you make as well, that we can cause the fear in others by doing our own thing and going down our own path. And I find that that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I guess it's the awareness of it, isn't it? As you say, it's once you become aware of it, then you can cope with it. Then you can figure out, okay, maybe this person needs a bit of a talk about this before I go ahead and do it, to make sure that we're all aware of what's going on, we're all aware of what's happening, And then that can make things easier, that sense of awareness that you mentioned, because sometimes awareness in itself can be the thing that changes. As soon as you're aware
Exactly.
that carbs are dangerous for you, if you have too many, your brain goes, oh, you can't do that again. Just having that awareness of what's right and what's wrong can be enough to change what you do.
Exactly, because we think that we know everything and we always want to be right. So we think that we know everything and we want to be right. But somebody who's been in the business for 30 years is telling you, Pat, this is not good, or you're never going to sustain that. And then you say, well, she doesn't know better because I know better than her. But meanwhile, she's in the business 30 years and she's seen the falls and the pitfalls and whatever. So you really have to stop. You have to stop and say to yourself, what is true here? What am I doing to myself?
Yeah, it's a good point as well. How else do we tend to stop ourselves? You mentioned the stories that we tell ourselves. Do they originate somewhere? Do they have something that starts the stories off?
Well, everybody has incidents that happen to them. Things happen that some of them are bad that really happen to them. But it's only one incident that happened. It's over. If the incident happened, it's over. We bring it up over and over and over, and it excels. The more we say it, the bigger the story gets. When do you stop that story from going? Bring yourself back to that day when this thing happened to you and write down the story that you told yourself. What am I saying to myself? Like, he's no good, he broke up with me, whatever it was. I got a divorce. That was one incident that happened, but what's the story that you're telling yourself? And then what's the story that you want to really learn from it? What do you want to learn from it and end it? End that story, because you'll bring that story to death. You'll bring it to your graveside, that story. And it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. So you can't really believe in your stories that you tell yourself sometimes. Sometimes they're valid. Sometimes they're valid. But like I said before, if you don't forgive what happened to you, you'll never move on to the next level. You'll never move on to the next point because it's always going to come back. I had a lot of crap happen to me when I was growing up and stuff like that. I let it go. I say, let go, let God, I'm done, and then it just frees you up and it's like the whole weight off your shoulder. And then you can say, wow, I've been holding on this for so long. And it's not necessary to hold on to it. And I don't care how bad that problem was. It could be rape. It could be whatever it is. Let it go. Forgive the person. It's not easy. I'm not saying this is an easy task at all. You know what I mean? But do you want to hold that the rest of your life? And this is where you're going to live at? Or do you want to forgive it and you want a life that you want to live the rest of your life in happiness and at least productive, because then you go into depression, you go into drugs, you go into alcohol, all this stuff is going to be, you're going to be buried with it. And it's not good to be buried with that kind of stuff. So do you want to live the whole life that you have planned out for you in that kind of misery? Or do you want to say, all right, enough is enough, let it go. God's in control. He's got it. He knows what I've been through. I'm just going to let it go and I'm going to move on. And that's what I do on a daily basis. I do that. You know what I mean? It's not something that comes natural. It's not something that you say, okay, I'm just going to let it go like that. I'm just going to, hey, don't worry about doing anything you want to me. I'm just going to let it go. No, it takes a toll on you, but know that everything that happened to you is a lesson for growth. And it's a lesson for you to help somebody else that's been there. If you didn't experience it, how are you going to help me? You know what I mean? I want you to help me that you experience this stuff. And that's how I became a coach, because I experienced so much along the way that I'm able to have that wisdom to know, okay, I know where you're from. I was there, and this is what, this is how we're going to work it out with you. You do what you have to do. And then you guide them along the way if they want to take that kind of suggestions and stuff. But they need to come out themselves and bring it out with them to move on to another level of themselves. And like I said, it's not an easy task, but it is so well worth it to move out of that crap that you've been telling yourself forever. And then all you need is somebody else to reconfirm your crap, and then you're right back in it again. You're enjoying it. Then you say, okay, I'm never going to change. People are telling me I can't change. They're right. They're right. So now you're saying they're right, and nobody's right. Change. You have the key to change.
One of the things that came up when you were sort of rattling on about gone. It's gone out of my head. No, it's not. The whole thing around forgiveness as well, and what sort of came up when you were sort of going off on one about the idea of forgiveness and moving on and letting go, and it made me think of the fact that we forgive others, but we don't do it for them. We do it so that we can let go and that we can move on. It's almost like, but it's a weird sensation to forgive them for us so that we can let go, so that we can move on. Is that something that maybe the people that you've worked with, maybe some common themes of that being a weird thing to do? We had to have a conversation with people around that so that they feel better about the whole forgiveness thing.
You mean if they're not feeling the forgiveness, they're not saying they're forgiving, they don't believe it in themselves?
Yeah, but then there's the whole like why should I forgive them so that I can let go, and there's the whole sort of it feels weird to
Yeah.
do that and all that sort of
Uh-huh.
stuff.
Yeah, because they want to hold on to their misery. They want to hold on to it. They won't forgive it. They'd rather see them dead. You know, they rather see them dead than forgive them. And that's not our purpose. Our purpose is to let it go. You know, God loves them just as much as he loves you. And it's like, you got to let it go. And it's not necessary for you to hang on to that anger, because that anger is going to bring on sickness. It's going to bring on deceit. It's going to bring on so many things that is it really necessary at the end of the day? And you see families out there that don't talk to each other because some stupid things that's done. And after 10 years, they don't even know what they fought about. I mean, how ridiculous is that, right? That's ridiculous. They don't even know why they didn't fight. And 20 years down the line, they're going to their funeral. Give me a break. You know, life is too short for the nonsense. Even if you can't forgive them, write a letter to yourself. Write a letter and just read it out. Like, whatever anger you have in there. But sometimes it's so odd because the other person don't even know that they did anything to you. And if you turn around and say, Michael, I accept your, I apologize for that, and I accept your apology. They don't even know what you're talking about sometimes, But go through the story and tell them how you were hurt by them. Sometimes they're not aware of it. Sometimes they could be joking. Sometimes it could just be something that's got out of hand, whatever it is. But if you tell them from the beginning that I don't like this, the way you're behaving with me, and I forgive you for everything that you did, let's start the new slate clean, they should be man enough to say, okay, I'm sorry about everything. I wasn't aware of it. Sometimes you're not going to get that answer. Sometimes you're going to get, the hell with you. I don't care about you. That's how you feel. I'm finished with you. And you know what? At the end of the day, that's the chance you have to take. Because if that's the person that did that to you, then are they really a friend? Are they really somebody who you want to be around? So at the end of the day, sometimes they will come back, and because it'll get into their head and they'll start thinking, well, maybe it's true what she said, because then they start seeing a pattern that they're doing with other people,
Mm-hmm.
So awareness, like I said, is key. But as long as you forgive and you let that go, it's not going to be easy, but it's well worth it. And it might take longer than shorter on the span of the time that it takes for you to forgive that.
It's curious, isn't it, how the whole process is different from person to person. But I know that some people, like, I'm trying to focus on the forgiving, I'm trying to let it go, but it's not an instant thing and it can take forever. And I say, well, it takes as long as it takes. It's not going to be cut and dry. It's not going to be after 1 week today you will be cured. It doesn't always work that way.
Right.
I think this process can also bring up a sense of judgment as well. Like, you start to beat yourself up because it's not a quick thing, because it's not overnight, because you still hold yourself back at the same time you're trying to solve these things, and it can be a mess of actions and like 2 steps back and 4 steps forward, and it can be a complete mess sometimes. How do you help people through that? If someone's like, okay, I get the forgiveness thing, I get the awareness thing, I get that I've got to let this thing go, but then if you say, okay, well, while you're in this process, it's not going to be sunshine and rainbows, what does that conversation look like?
It's tough. It's tough because you have to love yourself and you got to love them. When you don't like somebody and they're doing some harm to you, I mean, to say I love you is like, whoa, that's a tough word to get through.
Hmm.
I think time heals a lot. And I think it's a process that you go through. It's not like you're clicking it on and off like a light switch.
Yeah.
You can't do it like that. We're human beings and we don't work that way. I think it's a lot of prayer, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of talking back and forth. It's like it's not ended. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even the people who will say like they were raped by a family member. Like, how do you forgive that? How do you do that? But you walk along people that are there for you, and you walk along, you try to take the right path. You can pray a lot, take the right path, and hopefully open up where you'll feel that peace in your heart. If you don't feel that peace in your heart, that forgiveness is never going to go down. It's never going to go down. So how do you get that peace? You may never get it from that. You may never get it from that guy or that girl. You may never do. But that's not your business. Your business is to let it go. All right? You did what you needed to do. Now it's time to let it go. And don't start making the stories up of why they didn't accept it, what's going on. That's their problem. Don't make their problem your problem.
Yeah, I think there's that element as well where we try to control things that we can't actually control as well. And you
Right.
mentioned the whole, like, we forgive them, we love them, we let them go, and all those things. But if they're not prepared to do that themselves, then to a certain extent, as you say, you've got to wipe the slate clean. You've got to sort of walk away almost and be able to, so you can do your thing.
Right.
It was one of those things where we do try to control the things that we can't necessarily control. And I do know there'll be a lot of people watching that have a hard time with that because maybe it gives them a sense of predictability. Like if I can control it, then it's certain, right? That I know I'm going to get this result because
Right.
I control all the variables, right? But is that something that you see a lot of as well, where people try to control the uncontrollable?
Well, if you knew me, I was a control queen. you know? I know all about control, you know? I tell you, I learned a lesson, boy. I control what I can control, and the rest I let go. And I don't care where it falls. Wherever it's gonna fall, I'll handle it when it gets down there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to learn to let it go because we don't have control. I hate to tell you this, but we don't have control over anything. We have control of ourselves and our actions, but I have no control over what you're going to do next. I have no control over you. We have no control over anybody, you know? And we think we can control everybody's actions. If I tell a child to stop, don't put your hand in that socket, and that kid puts his hand in the socket, I have no control over that. We have no control over anything. So if we think we have control over somebody else, we need to take it back and give ourselves control. We got to get control of ourselves, where we're at. That's what I'm saying with forgiveness. We can't control how that other person is going to act. That's why we're so afraid to forgive, because we're afraid if we even open our mouth about the incident that this person's going to hate us, what they're going to say. I'm going to lose a friend. He's going to talk about me. She's going to talk about me. All my other friends, they're going to put it on social media. We are so frightened of everything that goes on because we feel like we have control, and we don't. I feel like you just say what you have to say and let it go, and let it go where it's going to go, because, eventually it's going to die. Eventually, once you let that go, it's going to die and it's going to be over. But if you never let it go and do that control, you're going to have that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, all I can picture is like the Frozen theme tune coming on while we start talking, the whole Let It Go thing. I just have this image of the Frozen theme tune. But I think
Right.
that's something that it's something that we can't. Again, it's the whole. It all comes down to control, and all comes down to that because we can't control how long it's going to take. We can't control if they're gonna, reciprocate or sort of give the forgiveness back. We don't know if we're all going to mutually let go, and do we walk the same path together or do we not? Because we can let it go and still, be friends and still work together or whatever the case
Exactly.
is. So it's not easy.
Exactly. It's all about uncertainty.
Yeah.
If we had a crystal ball, we'd be fine, We go over that crystal ball and know exactly what we have to do. But we don't have that. So it's a lot of fear. and a lot of uncertainty that brings us to the point where we are. So once you release that fear, and let me tell you something, it's not easy. None of this is easy stuff, you know, but it feels like a weight is lifted off your shoulder because you're releasing all of that. And you don't know the outcome. You don't know the outcome. And I know today's day and age where I'm older than everything. So it's like we did phone calls, we did in-person meetings. Now today they think of nothing of texting you and befriending you and say, you're no good, you're this, you're that on a text message. You know what I mean? So what do you do with a text message that comes in that way? It's like, oh my God, now it's in black and white. You're reading that over and over again. And it hurts. But what do you do with that? So it's a whole different atmosphere in this day and age to control people. But I think the best thing to do is you got to go in person when you're going to be speaking to somebody. When you have something important to say to somebody, I'll be damned if you're going to send me a text. If you're going to send me an email. I don't go for that. You either pick up the phone or I want you face to face, basically. I want to see what's in your eyes. I want to see what you're telling me. I want to see what the truth is. That's the problem that we have today. Nobody has that. There's no intimacy anymore. You know, it's like it's being wiped away by a text message. People break up with their girlfriends. They break up their engagements with a text. That is, to me, that's cowardness. Then you're being a coward, you know? Face up. You know, face up what you need to do and get it out. And that's what I believe that should happen.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that can come down to it is going to be hard, but that's kind of what being brave is, right? It's not about it being easy. It's about doing the hard thing. You know, it's about doing the thing that you are scared of doing. It's about doing the thing that you don't really want to do. And I guess people do avoid that, don't they? That's part of what we're talking about is people avoid being uncomfortable, don't they? They avoid the whole uncomfortable situations and the uncomfortable conversations and all those things. But you're sort of saying, you know, that's the world that we're in now. People do that all the time. What would be your sort of last pitch advice to someone that's been struggling with this for a while? How would you break the whole thing down?
Well, you know, this trickles from your personal life into your business life. It trickles into everything, you know? I mean, you just got to say, like, say if you wanted a raise when you were working and you wanted a raise in your income. I wouldn't do it in a text message. I would walk into the boss, close the door, sit down and talk with them. Is it easy? Hell no, it ain't easy because he may say no. We don't want to hear the word no. That's the thing. We don't want to hear no. But you know what? Once you do it and you get it out and it's face to face, then you know what you're dealing with. You know what you're dealing with there. You either accept it or you don't accept it. You could either accept it and say, this is great. I'm so glad I opened my mouth. I should have asked for more of money. You know, I should have asked for more. Or you could, or if it wasn't acceptable, you change your job and you move on. Nobody's keeping you there. You have total control of what you do to yourself. They're not going to keep you. It's the same thing with a personal, right? If somebody's bothering you, it's very difficult. I have a friend right now who will not talk to her friends because she's afraid of the answer she's going to get. And how it's like 5 years, and she knew these people since she's born, and she's 66 years old, and she's afraid to talk to them because afraid that they're going to leave her forever. But why would you be afraid of it? Well, see, people are afraid of the answer they're going to get. But I'd rather know the answer and move on than not know and make stories up about what's going on. And that's where the courage comes in. The courage comes in for that spot. Yeah.
That's a very good point because people want certainty and yet they're avoiding it at the same time.
Right.
So the way you find out is by doing the uncomfortable thing, but we also avoid finding out because we don't. It's almost like we want the certainty that we want, but we don't want the certainty that we don't want.
Right. That's the problem. That's the problem. But the whole thing is you got to understand that once you get that answer, then you can move on. Then the choice is yours. You're denying yourself that choice, but holding on to the crap that you're holding on to by not doing what you needed to do.
Yeah, it's weird. Literally, that literally just come up from what you were saying. It's like people say, "Oh, I hate surprises." I was like, "Well, you like the surprises that you want, though, don't you?" I was like, "Yeah, but I don't always get surprises that I want. It's the same with like certainty. It's the same with anything. If we don't want it, it doesn't matter how certain it is, how clear it is, how much of a surprise it is. We don't like the stuff that we don't like, and yet we search for it. We search for the certainty that we might not want, but prepared to hold on to not knowing, even if it's a negative thing. You know,
Right.
like, it's almost like, as you said, we create the stories, right? So we can create a story that we don't like and hold on to that rather than trying to find out what actually happened, even if we might not like that either.
Right.
You know, so if you're not going to
Right.
like it either way, surely it's better to know what it actually is.
You know what they say, that comment, truth will set you free. You know? And that's the truth, because then you could make a decision on what you want to do. Otherwise, you're living in that crap and making stories up the rest of your life, and you could have just ended it right there. Yeah, it might be difficult. You might cry. You might bang on a door, punch a door in, whatever you have to do. But then you could move on. How are you going to move on holding on to that stuff? You can't. You can't move on holding on to that. And then more hatred comes, and then you feel like crap too. So it's not good all the way around. Like I
No,
said, it's not an easy task to do that.
yeah, it's probably one of the hardest things ever to
It
do.
is.
But the people that do it, sometimes you don't have a lot of friends. But sometimes they're the nicest people to meet because they're prepared to have the uncomfortable conversations and do those things that most people aren't prepared to do. So it's one of
Right.
those situations of what would you rather have?
Exactly. And at the end of the day, you're with the people that you need to be with, and the other people that didn't agree or did agree or whatever, they basically have more respect for you because you came up and did something that somebody else wouldn't do. You know, to me, you get more respect that way. They know that, she's honest and you're honest, and this is how it is. I'd rather be honest than somebody making me go crazy all over the place.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to round things off, Pat. How can people learn more about you? Where can people go to find out about what you're up to?
I'm on Facebook a lot. I have, my Facebook page, Pat Pilla. I'm on that. I'm on Instagram. I do a lot of stories and stuff on Facebook, and I put a lot of things on there. I do women workshops certain times of the year. I wrote a book called Overcoming Your Evil Twin. You could find it. I have it here. Look, Overcoming Your Evil Twin.
Oh, cool.
Is your mind playing tricks on you? You can get that on Amazon. And there's also a link in there for me too, if you want to reach out to me.
All right, awesome. So what we'll do, we do have someone joining us live. So what we'll do, I'll mute myself, and then Deb, who's on live, I'll unmute and uncamera you. If you want to re-camera you can. You can have video or not, it's up to you. And yeah, we'll get cracking if you've got any questions.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just trying to sort controls out here. Hi, Pat. Nice to meet you. Yeah, I've recently sort of heard lots about you, so I was keen to hop on and find out some more. Lots of good things. So it's great to finally meet you.
Nice meeting you, Debbie.
Thank you. So yeah, it's been really, really great and informative. I've really enjoyed listening. Just a few questions. Why do you think that there's so many people that stay in the same situation that they obviously don't like, and they're prepared to gripe and moan and make a drama out of it?
It has to do a lot with fear is number one. And number two is you get very used to being the way you are. You don't want to change. So that becomes a habit. That's a habit that you have that's hard to change. And you would rather stay there. You're more comfortable in your misery than you are if you want to move on. Because if you want to move on, that means you have to work a little, and we're lazy. We don't want to work. And we'd rather stay in the crap we're in because we get more sympathy. People go, oh, you poor thing. maybe they need more attention, all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely fear and of change. Fear of change is the biggest thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if you are changing and working on your self-growth, I know that I've found that people that have already got relationships with family and friends and acquaintances even, you worry and hold yourself back that the transition that you're going through, new goals that you want to achieve, you don't want to broadcast it and put yourself out because you're thinking, well, they think you're a such and such, you just do this, that's your little job, that's where you are. And you say, no, actually, I'm actually a coach now, I'm doing this, I'm helping people. But you hold back on saying that and putting yourself out there as much as you can because of this fear of everybody that's already in your life and what they might be thinking, even if they don't say that to you. So just wondered sort of how you would get around that.
Yeah. If you had a 9-to-5 job and everybody knew what you did, I'm a secretary, and everything would be fine.
Yeah.
But what makes you that? The whole purpose is I tell a lot of the clients that you got to worry about what you're doing and not worry about what other people are saying. Everything is individual. You're coaching people. You're not hurting anybody. Basically, you're helping somebody get to the next level of where they want to go. Yeah. And some people don't understand that because they want to stay in the same path that they're in. As far as I'm concerned, like I said before, I don't care what people think. I just keep on moving in the direction that I know I need to move in. And once you have that high standard for yourself that you know where you need to be, none of that should matter. And the people that are down on that they're talking to you like that, or you want to say anything, they don't really care. They just want to open their mouth. But at the end of the day, they don't even care about you. Even family, friends, half of them don't even know what I do. Because I was a deputy clerk before this. I had a baking business online. Now I'm a coach. But between all these things, I could see how my life evolved around doing all this kind of stuff. Because it was always about helping somebody else. It was always about getting somebody where they wanted to be. So that was always my main theme, no matter what it was. Even in my office, people would come in my office, close the door, and we would talk in the middle of in the office about all their problems and all their stuff. So I know people come to me for all those kind of things because I'm sincere, I'm honest, and if I can't help you, I'll tell you I can't help you. You know what I mean? But I'll walk with you. I'll walk with you, and I'll walk through with you. And it's like I don't care what anybody says to me. I don't care if they say, oh, how do you think you know this and how do you think you know that? I don't know anything. Do you know anything? I don't know anything either, but we're working together. We work together and we help each other out. And that's what is friendship and loving somebody else and helping them to the next level is what I do. And that's what I love it. So I don't care what anybody else says. If you're convicted enough to know what you need to do, no one out there should be stopping you.
Yeah. Yeah. Fabulous. And another one is there's like the fear of sort of the culture of suing people and the fear of all the rules and regulations and things, and how does that sort of impact people and stop them taking big action and growing?
Suing them for what? Like what?
Well, there's so many rules and regulations everywhere you look, and you're afraid of stepping on toes or doing things wrong. And
like the me movement and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You're afraid of all that kind of stuff going on. I get crazy with all that. You know what I mean? You got to be careful what you say, what you do now. Sometimes you can't even open your mouth. It's getting a little out of control. That's getting out of control. All right. I say do stuff out of love. Do stuff out of love and just know that you're committed to what you need to do. Anybody could sue anybody. What right do they have? You know what I mean? Anybody could sue me, but what am I doing here? Really. In my baking business, yeah, they could sue me if they got poisoned, if I didn't do things right. All that kind of stuff is a different thing. That's, but I wouldn't worry about being sued. I would have contracts in place, knowing that they would sign off on these things, and knowing what their rights are and what my rights are. That's the way to go. If you're into something like that, you got to have a contract by an attorney and know that you're covered, and have insurance enough that you're covered for that.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, that's everything I've got. That's really good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
One of the things that sprung to my mind when you mentioned the rules and regulations and all those things is people like to put us in boxes. They like to put us in a box, to call us something, a label or whatever it is, to make themselves feel better to a certain extent. Like if you've got a 9-to-5 job and you're a builder and that's it, and all of a sudden you want to be a florist or you want to be an artist or whatever it is, it questions their old label. It's different from what they thought you were, and people, I don't understand why people respond intensely to that. I'm all for ooh, that's different. I wonder how that's going to work. That's better than, no, you can't do that. You're supposed to be a builder. I think there's different versions of the same conversation. Like if someone says to me, oh, well, I used to be a builder, but now I'm a florist. I go, oh, great. Have you got experience with that? Like, have you done it before as a hobby? Like, I don't know if it's going to work, but, change is change. You do what you want to do. But then there are people out there that, as Pat said, people don't like change. But I think it's more about how people respond to it as well. How intense do people get sometimes?
You know what? It's so funny you're bringing this up, because I coach people, on a daily basis. And there was one person that I was coaching, and they were in the restaurant business. Loved the restaurant business. He was a cook. He was a restaurant. He owned a restaurant. And then all of a sudden he wanted to be a fitness trainer. He had the hardest time transitioning to that position. How could it be? All my friends are there and they all know me as that. How can I go into this? You're in your head. You're in your head. At the end of the day, nobody cared or even remembered that he was in the food business when he transferred over into the fitness business. And I had to get him out of that mindset to say, people, do you think that everybody knows your life? Do you think people are following you with a pencil and writing everything down you're doing? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. You're out there, and people were congratulating him on going into the fitness business, but it took a big mindset change for him to come out of there. Like when I made my transition from, say, being a deputy clerk, and I was a baker, and then all of a sudden I went into being a coach. Do you know what? People don't even remember anything. It just flows. I'm telling you the truth. It just flows. People don't know. They're not following you 24/7. They don't know. They just see what you're putting out there. They see what you're putting out there. And I think it's all, like I said, the stories we tell ourselves. This guy, it took me months to have him transfer over into that set that he was into now. You know what I mean? Like, now you're not that anymore. You got away from there. Now you're this. And then he grew. Then he loved it.
Yeah, I think it's both parties, isn't it? The story that person's telling himself about you might be changing and they might not like it, but then your story, it's almost like we try to mind read sometimes. Like we try to think about what other people are thinking. And,
right.
It's a weird thing, because you might, as you said with your client, is that no one was that bothered about the fact that he was changing industries.
No.
And he probably thought that people would. But then there could be that one person that actually does. Because you question their own story, you question their story about you. And again, as I said, some people aren't that bothered. Some people just care enough to ask you a few questions about it, just so they're clear on what's going on, because it is different and they like to know. Some people are just curious, like I am. But then there are people that are like, no, You own a restaurant, that is what you're supposed to do. You're not allowed to be a personal trainer because you own a restaurant, right? So I think it kind of, there's that push-pull thing, isn't there? But as Pat said, that you never know. You don't know what's inside their head. And if they do respond like intensely to it and it's a negative thing, and it's like, well, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. So I think there's that whole element of you don't know what they're going to think. It might be bad or it might not. It might just be a conversation that they need clearing up to make sure that, hey, now I understand what's going on. Now I understand and it's great. It's awesome. Go ahead and do it. But I think that, as Pat said, if you spend so long inside your own head, and getting back to what we said before, you don't find out. So you don't actually make the decision. You don't actually do it to figure out if people do actually have a grudge against you doing your different thing. You don't know. You've got no idea. And as we said, people are more likely to hold on to their own story, if it's true or not, rather than find out what's actually going on.
Exactly. That's why it's good to have a coach helping you along with the transformation that you're making, because they can keep your head straight. You know, they can keep your head more clear. And you need clarity at that point, because you start thinking that. You start saying, well, maybe they're right. How can I do this if I'm that? Well, I was always used to that. How can I do this? But you need the clarity. And like I said, you're telling yourself stories that don't even belong there, because these people aren't even thinking half of that stuff. You are. And that's what stops, like you said at the beginning of the whole thing, that's what stops people from progressing and doing what they need to do.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any other questions, Deb? Any follow-up questions from what we've said or not?
No, that's everything for now. Thanks. That's been great.
All right. Awesome. Well, Pat, it's been great to have you on. Hopefully we can connect in the future. I'd love to keep in touch.
Yes, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been great. Thank you, Michael.
It's been great to have you on.
Thank you.